My name is Kyle Willis, and this is Marketing from the Roosevelt Room. Welcome back to a new episode of Marketing from the Roosevelt Room. I'm excited to jump in today talking about sacred cows of our sales culture. Here in today's episode, what excites me about what we're going to be getting into is being able to tackle some of the mantras and attitudes that have become the eminent domain of sales that, as we hear from our guest today, it's time to change. And I think, as we learn in today's episode, that there's a new shift coming to sales that our guest Adam Zais is leading the charge on, and what he's been able to bring throughout an extensive career in sales, over 38 years in sales, seeing what's become these sacred cows that he's saying, all right, we've seen what happens, we've seen the culture these create, and it's time for that to make a shift. So I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Adam Zais. Adam's had a career in sales that stretches back over 38 years. If you ask him, he'd tell you he's finally starting to get a hang of it. But as I've spent time with him over the last few weeks talking sales, I think there's a lot more to it than just finally getting the hang of it, Adam. And I think our audience today is in for a real treat. I think as I've learned from you over the last weeks, we've been talking sales, that you got your start in sales, and I'll ask a little bit more about this in the beginning, but from the computer industry, and you've been a part of creating and building 7 software companies to a successful exit or strong ongoing growth when you left. Is that all right?
That's right. And it's, as I look back, I tell my kids say to me, first of all, thanks, Kyle. I'm great. It's very exciting to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. My kids tell me, well, Dad, you've had this great career. You talk as dad to a parent, as a parent to a child, and they're asking about what are they going to do, and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, you have to understand that I didn't necessarily plan it in advance. It looks great in the rearview, but yes, thanks. For, it's a number that is a little daunting. But I have gravitated towards software companies, number one, and smaller startup type companies. Not because it's better industry or anything like that. It just happened to be what was in front of me, and it was a lane that I picked, and I can tell you why. Back. I wasn't. My first job out of college was at a manufacturing company down in New Jersey, and I was an inside sales rep at what they call factory sales. So I was dealing with our distributors and so forth. And it was in that job that I met one of my great mentors, Vern Getman. He's no longer alive, and he'll. I might tell a story about him in the podcast. But the other thing is, I got my first introduction to computers at the time. The company was trying to put in what was then called an MRP system, and I just said, "Oh, this is really cool." Raised floor rooms. Key punch cards as the system loader, and it was all very. It seemed like this is the future, and I said, I want to be involved. So that's how I decided after that, although I didn't go into computer industry type jobs for a while after that, I always knew that that's where I wanted to end up. So.
Yeah, love it. Okay. And so as you guys started in that, where I love to know, as you began in the computer industry, as I've learned, you were one of the founders of Wistia. I'm a Wistia customer, and you've seen.
Thank you.
And well, thanks for creating a great product. And so in that, that company, now you're VP of sales and marketing at Refract, and it can go through your lineage of great companies that you've been with. But I'd love to just begin by what brought you into sales. What was your passion? Was that something you were born into, or is that something that you developed along the way?
Awesome question on two levels. One, it's an awesome question to develop a sort of a personal context, but it's also one of the sacred cows
Yeah.
that people are born into sales. No, I wasn't. We're going to debunk that. We're going to myth bust that in a second. But my personal journey was, I got out of college and I called my dad and I said, so I have a political science degree. What am I going to do? And he suggested that I contact somebody, and it was the job opening was in sales. So I said, I'm going to take this job because it was the one that was in front of me.
Yep.
And so there's two things about that. One is that's just me personally. I decided to do it because of the circumstances. I needed a job. I'm very lucky that happened to have been the job. I didn't select it, and I think it's not because sales is often and I do believe it's a profession, by the way, but sales is often a career that people back into, and I think that should change. That's not one of the sacred cows, really, sure. But it's a point of view that I would hope that people begin to, as the world keeps turning and so forth, people are selecting into this profession the way they might decide to be a doctor or a lawyer. So I kind of backed into it without a lot of thought. But no one, in my view, is born to sell. That is one of the erroneous, I think wrong-headed, knuckle-headed, frankly, points of view that people have, that there is a personality type. What they mean by they say someone is born to sell is that they're celebrating the gift of gab, or someone who is outgoing in the way extroverts are outgoing, and that they're a people person or something like that. And the reason I call it a knucklehead moment is that being in sales doesn't have anything to do with one's personality. Meaning having success in sales isn't a function of one's personality, bubbly or otherwise. You've probably met plenty of people, I know have, in my experience, people who have great sales results come from exhibit a whole bunch of different kinds of personality. So it isn't about talking a lot, or the life of the party, or anything like that. So the idea that people are born to sell, and that as long as they have those kinds of personality attributes, they'll be successful. Can I swear like my friend Keenan swears? It's just horseshit. It's absolute horseshit. There are people who are born with more athletic, that native, sort of innate athletic skill than others. Okay, but sales is a profession that can be taught. It can be learned just like anything else. And to be good at it takes practice and great mentorship and, frankly, great coaching. And I was lucky. I had great mentorship and great models, if you will. My dad first among them, and then Vern. We can get to Vern in a bit. And coaches, and I'm still getting coached even today in the company, in the context that I work now, by people half my age or younger. I learn every day from that. So that is what turns out to be what you need to be successful in sales. Not a personality that people all of us suddenly think are, if you're a people person, you'll be great at sales. It's just horseshit.
So what I'd love to hear from you then, because I think what you have to offer, and what I picked up from our very first conversation is, and I know you currently lead the North America sales team for an international company. You talk about this aspect of mentoring and building a sales culture then for someone who is either just getting started in sales or hitting that roadblock and hearing that sacred cow of I'm not born with it, so should I be considering?
Well, yeah, so let's we're sliding right into another sacred cow, so to speak, which is that sales organizations, if you look at them, tend to be white male, in fact, and people tend to think that being an athlete is some requisite or something like that, or perhaps even coming from the military or something. Sure. The kinds of sales organizations that you see in movies or in even in just sort of the commonplace, I think, perspective of what a sales organization is that you look at Mad Men, for example. It's
iconic example.
It's a male dominated. It still is. And we're all bros. It's like locker room talk. Oh man, I can't believe I went there. You got to edit that out because the cultures are typically authoritarian and militaristic, and instead of being oriented towards development and coaching and so forth. So the sacred cow that I think that we're talking about here is that it's got to be go or rah rah or sort of, well, just a bunch of guys, getting stuff done and, eating ready. You hear people they even talk about it. They use words like, we're meat and eating people. We're killing what we eat, we're eating what we kill, and we're going to crush the competition. And it's like this. It's like, come on, you're kidding me. Can we have a little bit more of an evolved point of view of things? And I saw this someone, one of my contacts on LinkedIn, who I actually know in real life as well, shared a video of he was talking about how do you get ready for your sales day, and the little video was, I don't know where he got it, was of a bunch of millennials, mostly male, mostly all white. There were like 15, 20 of them, and 4 of them happened to be women. And they were doing this sort of like the kind of stuff you see the New Orleans Saints do before a football game. Like Drew Brees in the middle, and everyone's yelling and screaming and pounding it's like caveman times. What is this going on? It's like, what kind of mindset do you have when you have
to hype everyone up?
In order to have great sales conversations, you got to listen to more than you're talking.
That's
and
good.
You're yelling and screaming and jumping around like you're going to play a football game. What do? Get on the phone and start yelling and screaming? I don't get it. I don't get why people, even in this example, these are a bunch of millennials perpetuating things that are just stereotypically wrong. I was aghast. You can read the comment that I made to my friend.
I think I'll have to go see your comment. I think I saw that video, and it made me think of like a Wolf from Wall Street example where everyone's getting hyped up before they start their day and waiting for the party streamers to run and everyone to take their drugs before they keep going.
The point of view that sales is about winning and someone else losing is in my view, the wrong lens to look through.
I like that.
I understand that we're trying to win. I happen to love to win. Yeah. I want to win, but it's not big. I don't want to win at the expense of other people. I don't really want to win. I care about my competition in the sense that, I mean, what I meant by that is I want to beat them, but it's not because I want to beat them in the way you want to beat another team in a sport or defend yourself against a man-eating, animal or something like that. And I certainly don't want to win at the expense of the customer. That point of view is just ridiculous. Sales selling anything should be about solving the buyer's problems.
I like that.
Pure and simple. It's just helping someone buy something that is going to be meaningful for them in their life, business-wise, and hopefully personally. A recent sale that I just did was with a company where the head of sales there, in the first call that we had, said, "I feel like I'm letting my team down because I can't do certain things now that I could do before." And when you have a situation where someone is willing to share, I think courageously here, willing to share something that was personal and emotional, that's the holy grail for a sales conversation. We have lots of sales conversations where people are saying, "Oh, we'd like to improve." You see this all the time in your business. "We'd like to improve click-throughs or visits to the website or something." But there's always a why.
Yep.
Why do you want that to happen? That's deeper level. It could be many layers deeper. In this case, this guy volunteered it up immediately. I didn't have to do much questioning to find out something that for him was a compelling reason to buy. That was personal and emotional. I want to feel like I'm supporting my team better. The elements of a great sales culture are right there with the leader saying, "Hey, the success of the team is predicated on my ability to help them as best as I can." I can't think of a better place for him to be, in at least in a mindset.
So Adam, I'd love to bring a positive spin to the negative sacred cow. And as you talked earlier about the importance of that, salespeople can be trained, salespeople can be mentored, and it comes through the culture that is created for that sales team. As you've built so many different sales teams over your tenure as a VP of sales in many companies, what is the one or two things that you'd say every sales culture needs to have that would foster and help grow the right kind of sales people?
Wow. What a question. I'll try to unpack the answer in no particular order of importance per se.
Sure.
I think one of the first things is one of the sacred cows that you and I talked about, which is people who are sales managers need to stop selling. The idea of the player coach is another one of those knucklehead things. You can't. The role of a sales leader, whether that's a team leader or VP of or a CRO of some multinational company or something like that, is the lion's share of what they have to do is to coach, to motivate, to hold people accountable, to to recruit perhaps, but it's not to sell themselves. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that most sales organizations do, is they promote their number one salespeople into being managers as if that's a career path. It's the skills and the mindset and everything of being a top producing sales rep and being a top producing in a different aspect manager are really night and day. However, what organizations typically do, and they can they make this mistake all the time, is, all right, the manager is also going to be having her own or his own portfolio of business, and that's it. It's just stupid. You got to say. So that's one thing. The second thing is top management has to be supportive of the culture in a couple of ways, which is we are going to take it upon ourselves as a mission to make every single person in this organization it'll be overachievers.
Yeah.
Every sales organization that with obvious I mean, there are exceptions to this, and happily increasingly exceptions to this. Every sales organization, I should say the typical sales organization looks like this. You got 2 or 3 people going to President's Club. You got 5 or 6 people that are at 80%, and then everyone else kind of sucks. I don't mean they're lousy people. And I'm just their results are and those results, by the way, could come on the back of being the number 1 sales rep the previous year. So it's just about where they are now.
Sure.
That's the way sales organizations look like. Just like you probably would expect. There's in any group, there's going to be a top and a bottom to a degree, and what top management needs to, I think, shift, the behavior change or the mind shift, the paradigm shift that they have to go through is that it's not just about the people going to President's Club.
Yeah.
It's our jobs as leaders of sales organizations is to onboard people and get them to productivity as fast as possible.
I like that.
And to move the middle of the pack and even the bottom of the pack to the front of the pack. Everybody needs to be producing, not just, you can't make your numbers on the back of 3 or 4 people and you're paying for everyone else.
Yeah.
But why in God's green earth would you not invest in figuring out how to help everyone become the best them that they can be, to the point where they're producing, getting the outcomes that not only they desire, but you desire.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about, there's, Oracle was always famous of saying, we just, 10% of the people are going to fire every year. I understand that holding people accountable to results is the lens through which most sales organizations and sales leaders look through. But what happens is that it becomes the perfection, if you will, or the result or the number becomes the measuring stick, not the change that people are making to try to achieve that. So so here's what I mean by that. Firing someone because they're not at quota is potentially something that is going to happen. But the way to think about holding people accountable is not to an arbitrary, achievement of some arbitrary number over which they really don't have that much control.
Sure.
The thing that you have to hold people accountable to, and by the way, the idea of a development driven and coaching driven sales culture is not singing kumbaya. You're still holding people accountable.
Yeah.
You're holding accountable to different things. You're holding them accountable to the changes that they need to embrace and internalize to get to the things that can be measured, like the particular number or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas in the more authoritarian point of view, it's just, it's this
get it done or get out.
Yeah, right. And it's sad. It's sort of a failure of leadership. It's being lazy, frankly, as a leader, to just say that's, okay, put you on a plan. Have you ever heard that? Put someone on a performance plan?
Oh yeah.
You know what that means? They're looking for a job immediately. They'll never produce for you in that period of time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so has to be top down, understanding that it's all about moving the entire organization to a place of getting great results and outcomes. If you do the math, the organizations that sort of have a few people at the top, maybe a few people right behind them, and then everyone else below 50%. And if you get everyone just at 80%,
yeah,
it's sort of this idea. I commented on LinkedIn today or was it today? Well, God, who knows, about this. It's not an idea that I came up with. It's sort of this aggregation of what you call marginal gains. If you can get everyone to improve a little bit, the whole typically is the results of that whole is going to be better than just having 3 people at 200% of the number.
Yeah, I hear that.
What other things differentiate it? I see this all the time. Oh, I don't have time for I don't have time for development. I don't have time for coaching. I don't have time for this. I'm dealing with making my forecasts. These are sales managers. Yeah. Any sales manager that says to herself or himself, "I don't have time for my sales reps," is in the wrong job.
That's good. That's true. So Adam, I'd love to hit another cow. And before I do there, I think back in my days when I went to the University of Washington's sales program. We're sitting down with our director of the program, and up above in his office, up above his desk, he had that famous line from Glengarry Glen Ross, "Coffee's for closers." And he always had his cup of coffee coincidentally on his table. And in that, we hear as we think of that movie, and it's become not just from that movie, but the phrase "always be closing." I remember in class one day, my teacher tapping that board, my ABCs, as I'm going through the sales program. Why is this a sacred cow, and what needs to be different about this attitude of salespeople should always be closing?
Wow. So first of all, if you really read the words that David Mamet wrote for that was originally a play that became the movie, it's not a celebration of anything positive. It's a dark and cynical look at humanity, just the way people are. It's that has become some, being held up by the world of sales as some kind of paragon of goodness. It's just so creepy that people don't see how wrong that was. Absolutely about the worst representation of people that you could write. Wow. It was not meant to be taken literally.
Yeah,
it was never meant to be taken literally. Coffee is coffee is for closers. Closing is completely overrated, in my opinion. What's really undervalued is, how do you start the conversation? How do you keep the conversation going? The idea that closing is something that we do to a buyer is just wrong-headed thinking. Buyers close themselves when they trust the person that they're talking to, when they view them as a trusted advisor, as opposed to like a vendor or peddler, and that's tough to do. It's tough to get to that place. It's easy to think that, I can arm wrestle this person and pin them. That's that, and close them. So, but the always be closing thing. Here's the one element of that I agree with. We should always be trying to get decisions to continue the conversations from the people that we're conversing with. That's true. We should always be "quote unquote" closing for next steps, and I don't mean closing in the sense of these stupid things like the trial close or the puppy dog close or the assumptive, these tricks. Or it's like, if you have to trick someone into buying, you are never going to sell anything to them again. Yeah. You may get, it's not, that's not how you're supposed to do this. So always be closing is getting people to focus on that thing that we talked about. Is I'm going to, or if you go to the movie and look at especially those scenes and what these people are trying to do, you see these people doing things that are unethical, immoral, perhaps illegal, but they're certainly based on persuasion, trying to wear the other person down or manipulate them, that's not a recipe for long-term success with that customer. I'm not talking about building a relationship like your friends. It's especially in the world that I come from now, which is SaaS. SaaS is software as a service. You have to earn that customer's continued subscription every minute of every day of every year. That's so when you have that perspective of we're in it for the long haul, and I'm not just trying to get this one thing out of you and then I can move on and we'll go to the next town. It's like that that commercial series that's on right now on television about it's things are just okay. I think it's an AT&T campaign, and these a mother and a child are in this carny like roller coaster or Ferris wheel or something. They say, so is the how's the ride? I put it together last night. I think I did an okay job. and they're like, oh really? Well, is it safe? Well, if it doesn't work, we just move to another town. So it's like that's the kind of that's what Glenn Ross was all about. It's I'm going to screw people out of their money. And so always be closing in that context was always be trying to rob people or manipulate them or talk them into something that they wouldn't otherwise do. That's not selling. You ever go to one of those timeshare things?
I have. On my honeymoon, okay. I got tricked into one.
Right. Kyle, you can win a Mercedes. You could win a Bugatti or, a big screen TV or this bag of peanuts. So you figure, hey, 1 in 3 chance of getting something good, or 2 in 3 chance. So it's and then they just wear you the fuck down. You can edit that out. They wear you down to the point where you just sign to get out of there. That's what the always be closing mentality is. And so let's put it in the context of your professor. Why do you think he said that? Is well, either he kind of thought that was cool, and that was some kind of meaningful thing to teach students about that. What he could have done instead is that, well, there's a thing that we can call closing that is worth doing, which is always trying to make sure that the other person there that you're talking with is engaged with you at that moment in time and wants to continue the conversation. And wants to get other people involved that need to be involved, and wants to do the kinds of things that you might be asking, like to try the software or to demo the software or to buy the software even, or to refer you to someone else if in the situation where it's not a fit. That's the only way to look at that phrase that makes any sense to me. Everything else is just wrong-headed thinking.
I love what you said a moment ago about how buyers close themselves when they trust the person they're talking to. And so I'd love to, again, bring a positive angle to the antithesis of the sacred cow. And I know this is an elaborate question, so if there's a simple way to give a little insight here, welcome it. If you say it's too complex, I'll understand. But are there certain questions or conversations you encourage of your staff to help the buyer in that process, establish that trust, provide value, to keep the conversation going?
There's 3 questions you basically have to answer as a salesperson. There's not, and if answered, it's not a guarantee that there's a sale happening. But these are really the 3 questions. Is there a problem worth solving? Not all problems are worth solving to people. If there's a problem that I had this today, I'm talking to a prospect. Might as well use a good example and tell a story. So I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but the reason they became a prospect is that they reached out to us and said, this is really an exciting, they became a prospect. All right, fine. So I have a discovery call with not the decision maker, and that's okay. Not all conversations have to begin with the decision maker.
Sure.
And the problem that this person was beginning to describe had to do a little bit similar to the story I told earlier about the sales leader that was felt they were letting his team down, letting their team down, and it was about we want to get better as an organization, and while I haven't figured out what the value of the state change from today to afterwards is,
Sure.
That's you have to figure out whether if you go from today to some point tomorrow and you spend some money and get and you have to understand what that gets you. If I change something for the better, what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents and or personal and emotional elements?
Yeah.
So you have to find out if there's a problem that's actually worth solving. That's the first question.
Yep.
And that's about building a business case. The second question that we have to answer is, does the person that you're talking to, and hopefully eventually as the decision maker, do they want to solve the problem? Do they want to solve the problem?
That's good.
And lastly, do they want our help? Those are really the three questions you got to ask. Yet you don't ask those questions, of course, but
Yeah.
those are the questions that you have to answer. A lot of people are taught, well, just find out who the decision maker is and how much budget they have and all this kind of stuff. And so questions begin to get asked like, do you have a budget? So that's a terrible question. It's a piece of information, I'll grant you, that you got to know. But asking, do you have a budget, it's a dumb question. So now getting to the point is, how do we try to frame the right questions to move conversations to the point where you understand if there's a business case and you can understand what the business case means in terms of things that are measurable either in money or in emotional, EQ kind of elements.
Yeah.
You see, it's the questions that you got to ask are really about what they care, what the buyer cares about, what in their world. And so you have to be, let's take out that ABC. You have to always be curious. You have to be curious about what's at the root cause of the situation that they're describing to you. And it may take a while to get there. So you have to ask questions that sort of sound like a 4-year-old. Why? There's this great scene from an episode of the Louis C.K. show where he's talking to his daughter at breakfast and she just keeps asking why, and he goes on and on and on about stuff that had he starts talking about. It's a wonderful. I'll try to dig it up.
Yeah.
It's if you can imagine. You have an 11 and 1-year-old. You said so.
Yes.
You can imagine them asking you questions about anything.
Yeah.
Whether it's your job or where you are in life or things that are maybe spiritual or whatever. They just keep asking why. They just keep asking why. And so I think taking that sort of marrying the little kid approach with it sort of the journalistic, the who, what, where, when, and why, those kinds of questions where it's different than closed probe questions where people can just answer yes or no. Yep. It's more open things that people have to answer in sort of prose, if you were, that kind of thing. The other things that we always talk about is to just if you can't think of another question, to summarize, or to play back to someone that they've. I know this is getting a little prescriptive here, but to play back and the. Or just to say, tell me more, or to exude curiosity about what people are sharing with you, and even to explain why you're asking a question to someone, which is a little meta. Here's the question. Let me tell you why I'm asking. Yeah. When I ask you about, who else cares about this. I'm trying to help you understand how you guys can go about getting a decision done in the context of your own company. It's not to help me. It does help me sort of, by definition, but it's really about trying to help you.
I hear that.
And those are the kinds of things that I try to it's because I learned it, and now I try to teach it. That's and those organizations which support that and help people either learn it, practice it, and perfect it are the ones that are going to win long term.
I hear that. So I got time for one last cow I want to cover, and it's a big one, but I welcome you simplifying it as much as possible. It's this attitude and belief that sales is a numbers game. It's that sales starts when we get the no. It's the quantity is what matters. For every 10 no's, there's going to be one yes. So just go crush it and dial for dollars. Why is that not the case? I'd love to hear your explanation of why you believe this to be a sacred cow, and instead, what kind of game is it? Is it a game at all?
Well, I guess you could call it a game. I tend to think of it as it's not a game.
Yeah.
It's serious, and whenever you hear someone say it's just a numbers game, it's that they don't really care enough about trying to be helpful. They're focused on themselves. I've just got to make all these calls, and who cares who they are? If they have a phone number, I can call them. The idea that just because someone has a phone number that they want to hear from you is ludicrous. It's not a numbers game. It's sort of like when looked through that lens, it leads to behaviors that are the wrong kind of behaviors. It's no, I don't want to buy this. Oh, now I'm going to go into gear. That's that, sales starts when someone says no. If someone says no, it means no. Then it could mean no, that you weren't effective enough to ask the right questions. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe they are a potential. Maybe they truly are a potential buyer. But when you hear no, the first thing I do is I say, well, I probably wasn't if I know that it's a well-targeted conversation to have started, and it leads nowhere, it's usually it's on me to have figured that out sooner than later. So I'll grant you that. But the idea that you should sell something, that what you have to everybody is, and it's just crazy. I'll tell you a funny story. Maybe I'll tell you a story. Hopefully it's funny.
Okay.
So back in the day, I go to this sales I've been to many sales training things. So I go to this, I'm not going to name the name of the sales trainer, who's very famous, written many books, nor am I going to say what the name of the training was, because it'll just be, it's quite obvious who it is, and I don't want it. It's not that. The point of the story is this. This sales trainer, very, very successful, very, 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 like I said, popular, comes into the first day of sales training. The entire sales force goes to this hotel, and we're sitting there in this room, and we see this flip chart at the front of the sales trainer's not there, but we're all there, and our VP's there, and there's this chart, and it just has a pie chart on it. It has a slice of, and it says 10% in the slice of the pie chart. And we're sitting there, and again, everyone's getting a little like, oh, what is this all about?
Yeah.
And the guy comes in with a big flourish and runs it. He was, it's kind of a little like that we talked about. The rah-rah thing is great. I'm gonna whatever. So he goes up to the flip chart. He says, "Does anybody know what this is?" And of course, no one says anything. No one wants to look like a fool, because we're all going, it's a pie chart. but no one's going to say that out loud to be thought like, at the risk of being thought an idiot. So he goes, In any marketplace, only 10% of the potential buyers in that marketplace are looking for your product right now. So we're all like, oh, we're all dutifully scribbling that down and going, that's gold there, right there. And he goes, so what and then he writes this big 90%. We all can do the arithmetic.
Yeah.
He writes the big 90% in the other part of the pie. He goes, I'm going to teach you how to go after the 90% because that's a bigger number.
Really?
You think about that for a second. So we all wrote that down and we're all nodding and going, wow, this is going to be great. We're going to make a lot more money. And I years later, I thought, what hogwash, man. Why don't you just spend all the time trying to find out the people that are looking for your product right now?
Yeah.
And, that has given rise to things like inbound marketing and whatnot. But it was always HubSpot didn't create inbound marketing.
Yeah.
It's common sense. There are people that really want what you have, and you just got to find them. So it's not about shotguns. It's about rifle shots. And that's a bad analogy. So it's not about trying to embrace the 90% and go after them. It's trying to find whether am I talking to someone who's in that 10% now. So that too has given rise to the ideas of, get to know fast, which is, you should find out whether the person that you're speaking to is in that 10%. So the idea of it being a numbers game, I'm going to call everybody to find out if they're in it. That's sort of, to a degree you have to, but it isn't about numbers. It's about being effective at figuring out whether the person that you're talking to is in that 10%, if you will. It doesn't matter if it's 10% or 12 or 15 or 30. It doesn't matter. And then beginning to answer those questions that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So there's a problem that's worth solving. Do they want to solve it? And they want your help.
That's huge.
The idea that you can just sort of waste all your effort on life is short, man. We don't have a lot of time to just sort of talk to everybody in the hopes that you have to work harder to find out whether you should be talking to anybody. That's why it's not when people say it's a numbers game, they're looking at it from the perspective is I'm going to talk to anybody who could give a rat's ass about what we do, versus trying to figure out the people that care about it right now.
That's huge. Adam, this has been awesome. I think what I'm pulling away is I love.
Chris, you're gonna have to fix a lot of this in post.
No, I'm gonna take this raw. This is perfect. I love what I'm hearing from you because so much of it, what you're talking about, is leading with values, leading with the relationship, and those three core.
Can I push back? Let me push back gently on something?
Yeah.
It's because I know your listeners are going to go, relationships. You don't need relationships. We don't have time for that. Relationships. It's not about trying to become a lifelong friend with someone.
Yeah.
It's the relationship is about, are people exchange both both people in the conversation feel that they're exchanging information freely, honestly, and willingly. Well, willingly and freely. So it's one of the other sacred cows. This is sort of like the maybe a bonus sacred cow.
Yeah.
Is that people say people buy from people they like, know, and trust. Well, the only one of those that's important is the trust. It's great to be likable, and you might even be known by the person. But if they don't trust you in the way of, I don't mean trust you that you're evil. It's, do they believe that you can be counted on to be helpful, and that you will do what you say? Trust is the thing that matters. Like and known, less so. So you can throw those two out, really.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's great to be likable. There are plenty of people who are not likable that do well because they can become trusted advisors quickly. They can because it's the differences in the kinds of questions that you ask. Yeah. Yep. And like we talked about, and so why are we on this topic? Oh, so I was pushing back on
relationship,
about the relationship. You can build a relationship that is in 30 seconds with someone that's important, that's appropriate for that call or that sales cycle. It doesn't take long to do, and that's the only reason I wanted to flag it as, it's not about trying to do this for a long time, because most sales cycles have to be shorter than longer. Okay. Yeah. That's the only thing I wanted to say.
No, and I think that's so important. I like your aspect of, it's not so much about who you like and know, but who you trust. And I think that last question you encourage that we have to get answered of, do they want my help? The aspect I mean by relationship, that aspect of, do they want my help? Do they trust that I can help them in the short term with the sale, the long term with the service? To, especially as in your industry where it's SaaS, the ongoing, as you shared earlier, that every month they're reevaluating that opportunity. Do I want to keep my subscription? And that's what I mean by relationship of, do I still trust that you can deliver on what I need help on?
Right. So. Yeah, I mean, think about it in terms of your business. You have to be seen as a trusted advisor. It's great that you're a nice guy. It might even be great that someone knows you, like it was referred to you. It's really about whether they feel that you can help them, and that they feel that you care about helping them.
That's key. That's key. Well, man, I'm so honored by your investment with us today, your time to be able to highlight these sacred cows, and make some cheeseburgers out of them, grill them up a little bit, and be able to turn them upside down of what foundations we need to rebuild.
And there's, I think, thank you for. I talked a lot. I got to say, you got me going there, because this is such a wonderful subject, and we only scratched the surface, frankly, of how many of these myths that are out there. If people, the kinds of people that I think that people should listen to. I don't know if you know who Keenan is.
Yeah.
I think he's great to listen to as an example. Read books like Quiet by Susan Cain, To Sell is Human by Dan Pink. I think Anthony Iannarino's latest book, I can't remember the name of it, sorry about that, but it may not be his latest book, but I got some good things out of that. But I'll tell you, in closing, the guy that I learned how to sell from was a guy that was this guy Vern Getman, who absolutely was a genius at selling. And I met him on my first job, and he had one of the worst territories in the country. He always outperformed other distributors because he had figured out how to be more helpful to his customers than the sales reps from his competition. He was more memorable, he was more helpful, and he became the value to the customers. It's very easy for people to say, become the value. It's very, very hard to understand or describe what that is, but I'll break it down. If you can become someone that they feel they can rely on to help solve problems, however, with your services, your product, or the things that you represent, you are going to be in a place to win more often than not, and to achieve more than less, typically. And that's for another time. This guy was, when I broke in, I was 21 years old, and he was in his 60s, and he absolutely kicked my ass he would get up at 4 a.m. and go to 6 at night, 6, 7 o'clock at the night. I mean, amazing stuff. And it was really, that's where I learned the expression is just help people buy.
I like that.
We're not selling anything. We're just helping people buy.
For our listeners' benefit, I'll make sure to put in our show notes links to the books that you recommend. And Keenan, I know it's salesguy.com.
Yeah.
When we first met, I enjoyed listening to him. I think he's got an incredible way to present, to make.
Yeah, he's not everyone's cup of tea. I get it, but I think he's got a lot of good stuff to say.
Well, I think when it comes to having a lot of good stuff to say, I think you gave us a lot today. So I don't mean that lightly. I think there's been a lot of value here and some takeaways, what we can make practical in how to get those 3 questions asked and be able to lead in building trust. So thank you for your time today. It's been a real privilege and honor to have you on the show.
Well, likewise, my friend. And I hope it's not the last time we get a chance to talk. I mean, not necessarily on the podcast, but
Absolutely not. I think we already got some ideas of what a round 2 podcast and conversation.
Well, we could talk about marketing. I believe marketing and sales is really 2 sides of the same coin.
Agreed.
People tend to think of it as something really, we don't have a really great word in English to talk about how these 2 concepts that are viewed as separate by virtue of an entire kind of point of view, especially I think deriving directly from the fact that they're 2 different words. German is a wonderful language to smush things together, as concepts, and smarketing doesn't make it. It's the goal is the same, to create and keep customers. Yeah. And we could talk about that sometime too.
I love it. I think we already got that, listeners. Look forward to bringing Adam back a second time.
All right, man.
Hey, I want to thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Marketing from the Roosevelt Room. I know you have a lot of options on what podcasts you can listen to, so thank you sincerely for taking the time to join us for this one. If you have enjoyed this conversation, would love to keep it going in our Facebook group, Marketing from the Roosevelt Room with Kyle Willis. In that, we have live video, Q&A, and create more of a dialogue. Would love to keep the conversation going, so please join us on Facebook. Otherwise, look forward to catching you on our next episode. Have a great day.